Hey, before we get going, today's episode of the No-Till Market Garden podcast is brought to you by Growers & Co. Have you checked out this site yet, growers.co? Have you picked up the magazine? Have you snagged one of their straw hats, shirt maybe? Because if not, you were missing out. Growers & Co. is a brand new brand from the brain of Jean-Martin Fortier, the market gardener, and he and his team are designing products around the work we talk about on this show. Their stuff is well made and well fitted, designed precisely for growers by growers. There are tools and apparel and a magazine that are all designed around the needs of people growing food professionally. I've been rocking growers gear all winter, but I got to be honest, I'm a little bit looking forward to the heat of the summer this year when I can rock my straw hat again. Can you tell how much I love that thing? I love that thing. Anyway, learn more and support their work at growers.co. Today's show is also brought to you by Farmers Web.
Farmers Web software gives you the tools you need to manage your entire sales process. Built specifically for farmers' needs, Farmers Web helps you save time, reduce errors, increase efficiency, and provides flexibility for working seamlessly with your whole customer base. Our free account includes features for sharing your real-time and coming soon product availability, as well as the option to create an availability calendar to inform buyers about your product's seasonality. Free accounts also include access to Farmers Web's how-to guides, offering pro tips and best practices on selling online to individual buyers, as well as how to work with such buyers as restaurants, schools, and stores. A 1-month free trial is available for the paid account, which includes all features to manage customers and orders, including accepting online credit card sales, handling advanced pickup or delivery orders, giving select buyers special pricing and payment terms, tracking your buyers' payments, keeping detailed sales records, and much more. Even manage orders and payments for buyers not placing their orders online. Request a demo and learn more at farmersweb.com.
Big thanks to our show supporters. All right, let's jam. Hey, you all, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to the No-Till Market Garden Podcast, episode 28, season 3. Got a great episode for you all this week with Justin Gay of Seeds of Xanxadu. I'm excited to do this because in the last 2 episodes, I went a little larger in scale than I have for most of, the entire history of the podcast. And today we're going to go a little bit smaller, like backyard small. I wanted to bring Justin in to talk about some of the ways he maximizes his space in Southern California, growing microgreens and now mushrooms, and complementing that with a small amount of garden crops. One of the interesting things Justin does is cuts many of his micros at market, and we talk about how that works and also how he gets full trays of micros to market without crushing them. We talk about mushroom substrate sterilization on that scale and a whole lot more. Really enjoyed my chat with Justin, and I always think micros are a good way to get some early cash flow, especially for young farms. But first, if you have not pre-ordered a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, it would be super rad if you did that soon. But if you do, please pre-order from notillgrowers.com, where the proceeds go to making you more content like this podcast, like the videos, and all the other things we do. You can go to notillgrowers.com and find it there. Or if you're like, books, well, there are other ways to support our work, from Venmo to Patreon to cryptocurrencies. Just go to notillgrowers.com/support and kick in a few bucks. We appreciate that. Thanks. All right, enough from me. Let's get into this amazing conversation with Justin Gay of Seeds of Xanxadu. Justin Gay, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, man.
Super excited to have you on, Justin. So let's start where we always do with this podcast. Where are you located? What kind of acreage are you working on? And those sorts of things.
I am in Fontana, California. I am on no acreage. It's probably right about a quarter of an acre lot that I'm on, or pretty much just the front and backyard of my house. Just a market garden, a really small macro market garden.
Nice. And then kind of give us an idea of how much growing space that is. Is it, how many beds do you have, or what kind of size are they?
Okay, so we run about 20. Actually, 18 30-foot rows, and then I have two 15-foot rows that I've kind of cut them off because I want to play around with some other things over there. And yeah, that's what we're running on there. And then the side of the house, which used to be a patio of sorts, that's where we run all our microgreens, and that's 12 by 31 foot over there. So yeah, and then we kind of play around in the garage as well.
Yeah.
And we got the mushrooms going on back there too. So.
Yeah, awesome. I want to hear about all that. Okay, so first, where are you selling? Are you strictly farmers market? Or are you doing, what's your sort of marketing outlets?
We're primarily farmers market. However, we, as of late, have been getting a couple people that want just to get direct deliveries, as well as restaurants. And now another one as of late. A lot of these pop-up markets have been kind of coming our way. So they're not quite farmers markets, but I guess they're like a monthly farmers market. That's probably the best way to kind of describe what they got going on. And we've been jumping on some of those, and that's been, pretty cool. But yeah, those are, for the most part, our primary, ways of getting this stuff off the plot.
Did I see you were working with other farmers too to sell some produce?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I play around with, I shouldn't say play around, man. I actually, we have a couple people around our area, man, because of the farmers markets, that actually farm. I've been able to just make really cool and good connections with the people. And a lot of them are farmers in my area. And so I've been able to, whatever I don't sell, I've been able to get from them at a, lower than wholesale price. I don't even know how to even describe what kind of price this thing is. They give it to me dirt cheap, almost free. And then I can turn around and sell to a lot of different restaurants and stuff, man. So that's been really cool. That's been able to help me out a lot. That's been really cool.
Nice. I like those sort of collaborations like that. I think that's, especially on the size and scale that you're doing, where you may not be able to produce all those things, to be able to have that as an option, especially for chefs. Like, that's got to be killer for chefs.
Yeah, it's really cool, man. I mean, like out here, my primary type of a restaurant, they call it Aussie kitchen. At least that's what I've come to learn the term is, where it's a lot of chefs or restaurants being ran by maybe like a sous chef of a pretty big restaurant, but they've just turned around and made a really small one. But they're serving really good food as well as coffee. And they have, a pretty good following. And those are the people that nowadays, actually all of the restaurants we hit now are all that style of restaurant. And so, yeah, it's been working out really well for them. And they're so small themselves that a lot of times they want to really support the local food, growing scene and farmers and all that kind of stuff. And so for me to be able to connect with a bunch of different type of farmers and give them, just different types of things that they probably couldn't get from Cisco or wherever, they're really into it, man. It's pretty cool. It's a really cool thing to be able to kind of play that. And, to be honest with you, man, vegetable buying has always been something that's kind of been on my radar. So to kind of play around with it this way, it's awesome. I'm loving it, man. It's cool.
Yeah. So did the restaurants did your sales to restaurants take a big hit or change a lot, through COVID, or were these smaller restaurants better able to sustain through the pandemic so far?
They were. It was a bit of a wave for maybe two of them. The others managed to stay open, which is, bravo on their point, man. I mean, on their part, they were just kind of just riding the wave and just making things work. So yeah, I was actually able to, all through COVID up to now, for the most part, able to just constantly give produce to them. And then it seemed like maybe even at certain points, the other two or three would just kind of pop back in and out. They would play like, I don't exactly know what was going on, to be honest with you, but some of them would get like, they would close down and they would open back up, and they close down and open back up. And I'm not exactly certain as to why. I know a couple people who actually had got like, a couple of the restaurants actually had employees that had contracted COVID. So I think that might be why some of them had closed. But outside of that, man, yeah, it was, yeah, I didn't get too affected. But again, like, I'm not a big restaurant guy here anyway. I mean, we do 5 at most, for the most part, all the time, and somewhere in there. So the restaurant game really isn't what I lean heavy on. It's something that I wouldn't mind getting deeper into, but it is not what I really lean. It's not our main bread and butter. So we were okay.
Nice. Okay, so give us a little bit of your background, Justin. Tell us a little bit about your origin story. Like, how did you get into growing?
I guess to start from here, the old apartment that I was in originally used to be a condo, so they had backyards to them. And I seen that, and I was like, okay, cool, that's something else for me to clean up. At that time, I was like, I don't really care about this at all. That thing came with a bougainvillea, and again, I was like, this is crazy. And I told my son, I was like, dude, what we're going to do is let this bougainvillea just grow as tall and as crazy as we can. And if we can make it a cave, that's what we're going to do. And I was just kind of playing around with him. Anyway, lo and behold, I went out to barbecue one night, and I heard something sizzling. And I look up, and the bougainvillea was kind of, it was kind of smoldering a little bit. It wasn't on fire. It was kind of just smoldering. And I was like, oh, shoot, I have to cut this thing down. So I cut it down. I was like, there's a lot of space back here, and I should make a garden. I have no idea. Really, yeah, still this day, it kind of baffles me. Is like, okay, why did I even say that? Why did I do that? And next thing I know, I was just growing. And eventually, I just was like, well, I've always been told, like, by my mom. She was always like, figure out something that you love to do, and then kind of make that your job. And it worked before in sound engineering, and so I was like, all right. So I shot again, and next thing I know, I was looking for space. I got a couple different lots and started farming on those. Kind of went a little bit too big at that time, but survived all that. Eventually bought the house that I'm in now and converted it over to a little market garden, and here we are.
Is farming now your full-time gig, or do you still do sound engineering and that sort of stuff?
I still do sound engineering. I don't do it nearly as much because of gardening, and actually because of COVID. In a lot of regards, we actually got a little bit busier because of it. So it made it to where the sound engineering actually wasn't the primary anymore. But another thing too, with the sound engineering, it actually got hit it got impacted by the whole COVID thing. Hollywood was just not having it. They're just like, no, man, like everything was just shutting down left and right. And so it was like, oh shoot, what do we do? It was like, well, his garden. And so yeah, I guess to answer your question, it's kind of now sound is almost more of my side hustle, to be honest with you. And gardening is a little bit more in the driver's seat, which is awesome. That's I like that.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great. I like that breakdown, and having that sound engineering side hustle. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that I thought would be cool to talk to you about, because I know you're working on a small space, and I know there are other people working on a small space, is your microgreen production and sort of how you complement that with some of your gardening. But can you guide us through your microgreen operation? Can maybe give us an overview of what you're producing, and then we can kind of talk about some specific elements?
Yeah, man, my varieties are, my staple crops are sunflower, pea, radish, and broccoli. That's kind of, I think, pretty much everybody's staple crops now. And then I will jump into like a brassica mix, and then I'll do different herbs like cilantro. I'll do a lot of chive. Chive is another really big one. We'll even get into like things like fenugreek as well. But those are pretty much the main ones that we do. And then I'll kind of get into basil, whatever other people ask for out there. I'll kind of give it a shot and work it into them. Normally, that kind of stuff, though, however, I don't really stick with a lot of the more exotic ones, just because, I like to just work with what's working in my system. And if it works in the system, then great. But even then, a lot of times I won't carry it on, like the special request, just because it can kind of just get a little bit crazy. Yeah, I kind of just stick to those. I mean, there's been times, man, or there was a time where I was growing, Jesus, upwards of like close to 13 to 15 different varieties. It was pretty intense. I was just doing a bunch of different things, and I found when I did that, I was getting way more contamination or just mold issues. There's all these different things because I felt as though I couldn't really focus on a couple varieties that were actually doing really well. And so when I decided to do that, I realized like, oh, well, these are selling great. And to be honest with you, these are the ones that are selling the most between the farmers markets and the restaurants. And so I just was like, the whole Prosciutto's law at that point is like, man, just cut these other ones and let's just go down this path. And it's been proven to be perfect. I know a lot of people will do, different types of radishes and, all that kind of stuff, which is awesome. But I at a certain point, I was like, okay, a radish just kind of tastes like a radish. The color is kind of what's going to be, drawing in chefs or even other people at farmers markets. Believe it or not, they really get mesmerized a lot of times by that beautiful color of things. But at the end of the day, making the decision of, for the most part, going mainly farmers market, it's kind of like, well, at the end of the day, am I going to go buy like something like a Rambo radish that's beautiful? It's a really deep purple, but it's really pricey per pound for the seed. Or do I go the way of Triton or China Rose, which is beautiful in its own right, and the seed isn't that expensive, and again, it's going to taste like a radish. So that was kind of like my thought behind some of those types of things. And then too, I was like, man, I can actually go. This is when I first started. I was actually looking at cabbages, and I was like, I can go cabbage, get that same beautiful color, and have a different flavor profile. So I decided to go with that kind of route, and it worked out for me a lot more. Just a lot better, I feel, because those seeds can get kind of crazy at times, and if you're constantly throwing money at them, your money can go away real quick. So you want to be careful. At least that's the way I looked at it.
Yeah, and then okay, so how many trays do you think you're selling a week right now?
A week? Well, we do right about 30 to 40 just for our mixes only, and then we will do. I'll take out another, close to 60. Just for the markets. So we're doing right about 100 now, but that can easily scale up to 200, especially with stuff like that. So we kind of fluctuate between, I'd say, 100 and maybe 200. And then too, when we actually probably are going to be jumping back up here again because we're starting to get a lot more requests for wheatgrass again. So that might pop us up again. Yeah, it's been really weird. The COVID thing, it's bringing a lot of things like that back, at least in my area, just because of everybody, really worrying about their immune systems and stuff like that, which is really cool. So it's really awesome to be able to provide that kind of stuff to people as well.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we've certainly seen, I think most farmers would say that they've seen a boost in interest, and it's cool to hear that the same thing has trickled into the microgreens as well.
Yeah. I mean, man, the whole broccoli thing, oh my goodness. It is insane. After Dr. Laura Patrick did her interview on Joe Rogan, this is like about a year or so, probably like 2 years now. When she did that, I had actually heard it the night it came out, and the very next Sunday, man, my broccoli sales had I can't say that they doubled because I wasn't ready for it, but broccoli had sold out immediately. Then I went the next time around, the next market, we were ready, and broccoli just kept selling. It took a bit of a dip, and then COVID hit again. I mean, not again, but then COVID hit, and man, broccoli just skyrocketed, and it's still kind of riding that wave now. So it's been a pretty good one to have.
Interesting. So that's why customers started asking me for broccoli like a couple of years ago.
Yeah, man.
Broccoli microgreens.
Dude, that was totally Joe Rogan. It was totally Joe Rogan. Man. Yeah, totally Joe Rogan. And even to this day, people still are like that. He's got reach. I've been like, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. It's been cool, man.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah. So at least that's how I looked at it. So.
Okay, so so one of the issues I have or have had in the past, and I'm sure other people have, is how to package them, and then also like dealing with condensation. What's your sort of strategy there? Like, what are you packaging them in? How are you displaying them? And then how are you like getting around the condensation issue?
Yeah, man, that has never really been an issue for me. We go through a double drying process here where we'll spin it and then go ahead and throw it underneath our dryers. And then we'll go ahead and put it out. But to be honest with you, I throw it inside of a couple clamshells. I mean, we throw everything in clamshells. And to be honest, like, it's never really been that big of an issue. However, I guess, you know what? I never really thought about it, but since the beginning, we rotated out our clamshells, like for our market mixes. That's what we call our microgreen mix. We rotate those out right about every half hour or so, from out of the cooler into the display, and it's nothing more than a box. We'll rotate those until they sell out, and yeah, that's kind of it. But I've never really had that big of an issue. Maybe now that I think of it, maybe one or two customers have said something. But I just say, hey, I mean, it's kind of condensation, and literally it just came out of the cooler, so they can feel that it's cool. So maybe that's what it is. That's helped us out,
Right, just keeping that rotation.
Yeah, and to be honest,
in and out of the cooler.
Just in and out of the cooler. I've actually thought of actually taking a small mini fridge and somehow getting like a plexiglass front of it so it can be see-through, and having that as a display case, if you will, and then people can just actually open the refrigerator and pull out their mixes that way. I've thought of that, but I don't have a proper way of powering it outside of the generator. That's a little bit too noisy. But yeah, and then the mix packs that we do, or the market mixes that we do, that is kind of like a small part of the sales market, because we do a lot of live cuts there, or live sales, I should say, at the market. And maybe that's probably why we don't hear about it that often, because we're cutting it live right there at the market. So we can probably circumvent a lot of that kind of stuff.
Like, break that down a little bit for us, the cutting it live. So you're taking full trays.
Yeah.
And you're scissor cutting them at market?
Yep.
And putting them in clamshells? Yep. Like, how does that, one, how do you get the trays there without them squashing each other? And like, what's the efficient way of getting them to market? And then the other thing would be like, what is the cutting process and how does that work?
So yeah, I have in my van, the way that it came was actually, it came with racks. It was an old electrical, actually no, this van was like the van, I guess they were running like electrical stuff for the city. So it has like these, it already came with these racks that fit that fit our trays in perfect. The 2-inch trays fit in a drawer, almost, man, right to the perfect level, to where so basically the tops, or the top of the canopy will fit into this drawer, and then we can actually put another tray on top of like the lip of the drawer, if this is making any sense to you. So they never touch each other. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like there's a space, there's like a gap.
Right.
Yeah, we can hold upwards of like, comfortably, I can hold upwards of like 50 trays in my van. And the van is where we make all the, like I deliver all of the market, if you will, via van. So I deliver just 3 of the market via van. The last market is one of the people that run that market. They take that one in their SUV, and we just space them out. Excuse me. We just space them out to where nothing is actually on top of one another. So it works out pretty well. But the van is pretty much the lifesaver there. To where we can take out a lot of trays at once and not really worry about them smashing anything.
Yeah. Okay. That's a great detail. All right. So talk about the cutting process. So like a customer comes up and wants a specific microgreen, like how does that go down?
So it's cool, man. They just come up and we do it. So we do everything by baskets. Right now I've been playing around with like your strawberry basket. And basically for a full one of those, it's $5. For half, that's 3. They can mix and match whatever it is that they want on the table. For the herbs and the more expensive greens, those ones we will sell for $5 for the half cup, and we don't have a small in that one. And then people will just come and they just ask, but it's almost like making snow cones. That's how I feel. They just, they ask, what is it that, actually they tell us what it is that they want, and we harvest it right there. And people really like that. That's the way that I've done it for the most part since the beginning of our farmers market sales. At the very beginning, we were actually harvesting, or I was actually harvesting everything and taking it out. But I was like, man, it makes way more sense for me just to go ahead and take out the tray and harvest it there. I figured I had to harvest it anyway. I might as well just do it with, what do you want? And I can just harvest it the exact amount at all times. And then whatever I don't sell, I can bring back, and then that becomes my, part of the mix for next week. So it works out really well. Yeah.
That's kind of brilliant. I didn't even think about it being something that you could just turn around and bring home and then resell.
Yeah. It gives it 2 lives.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't like, for instance, if we cut arugula and we take it to the market and it doesn't sell and we can't find anybody to immediately buy it, it's in a bag and it's pretty much, it's got to go.
Right.
So there's not like there's only maybe a very small window, especially if we kept it in the cooler and it was, all kosher there. And we felt good about selling it. I mean, there's only a small window that we really can continue to feel good about reselling it.
Exactly.
But when you have a live product, it just keeps growing. So it's not necessarily.
The rush.
That's kind of cool. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. It's a great. There's it's a great way to go, man. And then too, my father was really big on preparing everything in front of him. He used to work, I guess, when he was a kid, he told me he used to work in, like McDonald's and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, you didn't want to know what was going on back there, man, with your food. So anyway, he was always like, He never trusted anybody to cook his food like that. So I guess that stuck with me, and it was always like, yo, I'd much rather just do this right here, prepare it in front of you. Whatever questions you got, you can ask me. And people really, really respond to that really well. And then too, man, it's like you're putting on a show. We're the only we're the only people in the market that are actively harvesting your produce, while you wait. And
right.
A lot of people are like, oh, dude, this is like the freshest thing in the market. And it's like, you're absolutely correct. Yeah, that's what's happening right now. And so, people see that, and next thing you know, you got a line. That seemed to happen a little bit more pre-COVID, is because you can actually get a crowd, which was really nice. Now everything's a little bit more like, okay, well, you have to be lined up 6 feet away, so some people might not see. However, now that I'm thinking about it, even people passing by still do see that, and they're like, oh, there's microgreens, and so you hear it. So it might actually, it still might actually play just as good. To be honest with you, a lot of times your head is just down and you're looking up, and you're like, how long is this line? You know what I mean? So yeah, I guess it still plays, man. It probably still does play.
Yeah, that's great. I love the idea of like kind of bringing the farm to them. Like it's the only kind of crop that you can really just bring and literally harvest in front of people.
Well, man, another way, and this is another one that I've kind of been playing around with, is if you were to go the way of hydroponic or aquaponic, the zip grow towers and stuff like that, you can there as well, live and fresh, man. People really dig that. Yeah, man, especially, I think in certain areas, they really, really appreciate that. They really are like, oh, wow, you're cutting this right here. And yeah, I think that's amazing. But I've seen that with the zip grow towers, where people are taking out arugula, they're taking out basil, and other things like that. I guess you don't have to go just zip grow tower, but just having the ability to be able to take that live produce, and this is full, heads of, well, I don't want to say full heads of lettuce. That's a little bit, I think, maybe too much, but full-grown leafy greens in a lot of ways, just taking it to them. Certainly baby greens, and they really are into it. But that, that does take having a display that can actually, hold that and make that work for you. So, but there's ways to definitely do it. And like I said, man, people really, they really like it.
Do you ever have, like, does the market have any issues with, food safety? Is there any concerns there? Like, what's the protocol? Are there any issues with that?
Not one. I haven't had one at all. Health department used to come around more when we were doing like juicing at the market. And that was just to make sure that the, stand was up to spec and all. But in terms of this, no. I mean, you want to make sure that all your utensils are being cleaned off and all that kind of stuff. But I haven't had anybody say anything, and I reckon maybe because of a lot of other farmers are there prepping a lot of their produce with knives and just different utensils, cutting off stems and just making things clean. Maybe that's why, but I haven't had one issue at all, not one.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, in some ways, it makes sense. Like as somebody who grows a lot of lettuce and greens, like the most sanitary it ever is when it doesn't get washed, when it goes straight from the field to a bag. Yeah. Whenever I can avoid adding water or any extra processing, then that I always feel the most secure about the food in that way.
Yeah, and it lasts way longer. I mean, it just always seems to be a way better product. The least amount of touching that you can do to it, especially microgreens and the leafy greens. Like lettuce and stuff like that. You don't really want to touch it that much.
Hey, you all, just jumping in real quick to get a word from our sponsors like Tilth Soil. Tilth Soil makes NOP-compliant living potting soils in Cleveland, Ohio with food scraps they haul and compost themselves. Each batch of soil is tested against the competitors and the results are in. Plants vote for Tilth Soil. To learn more about their full line of products, please visit www.tilthsoil.com. The show is also brought to you by you, the patrons. Did you know we have almost 600 patrons at patreon.com/no-till-growers? And just a fun note, I will be shouting out everyone who signs up in the month of April, of which at this time of recording, there are still a few days left in April, just saying. And as always, anyone who bumps up from one level to another gets a shout out on the show as well. So big shout outs this week to Anthony Wortley, Kevin Allison, Full Circle Farm, Nicholas Echeverry. If I said your name wrong, Nicholas, you let me know. I'll say it again. Permadynamics, Donald Hutchinson, Jeremy Hunter, Rimmel Greenhouse Systems, Scott Snodgrass, and Jean-Martin Fortier. Big thanks to all of our show supporters. All right, back to Justin. What do you kind of expect to earn per tray? And then what are you doing with the trays afterward? Are you recycling that mix at all and that sort of thing?
Oh, man. So, yeah, right now, as we are kind of transitioning more into spring, of course, now our trays are worth more, right? Because they're a little bit getting a little more full. Because we do, primarily, we are in a greenhouse that is somewhat heated. I'm actually working on a heater, but it's not 100% controlled. So I do have fluctuations in my tray weight. But right now I can expect right between $10 to $15. That will, as going into spring, I can probably get that to $15 to $20 per tray. So yeah, it's really nice. What I like to do in terms of the trays is as soon as we harvest them and they're done, I go ahead and I empty that out and just put it in construction bags. However, as of late, a lot of people at the market, like just different vendors and workers on the market, have been hitting me up for the compost. So that's been really cool. I just been putting it in like some garbage bags and just giving it to them. The stuff that we harvest here, what I was doing originally was taking it to another local farm that had a really nice, and they still do, a really nice composting program. I was just donating it all to them. But that was a pain in the butt, man. So I would have to get a U-Haul, take that down there to them, work, pulling all this stuff out of the U-Haul. These are bags too. Like I said, we already have them in construction bags, and we actually still do use those. But having to pull that out and then mound that stuff up, man, it was a workout. But what I've since been doing, and this has been a dream, is, and this is what the compost that we are, using here, or I'm sorry, not using here, but the trays that we're harvesting here for the mixes and whatnot. I've been posting on Nextdoor, that app, and putting it up there and saying, hey man, if you guys want some free compost, come on down and pick this stuff up. And if you have a receptacle, it's free. If you don't have a receptacle, you have to take our bag. It's $2. And I've been almost making like, I don't know, man, like $20, $30 off of just these off these old spent bags of compost. And people are just coming and picking this stuff up. I'm not working anymore at doing that, and it's been good. It's been awesome.
Yeah, that's great. I like that idea of figuring out a way to sell it. Do you just have enough for your own garden? You're not really needing to recompost your own garden with those?
Oh, my bad. Yeah, well, I do.
Spent trays then?
No, I do use a lot of those spent trays in my garden as well. Yeah, we use a lot of that. In fact, I did for the most part, 2 kind of piles this year to actually house it, to put a lot more of it on our bed, just to kind of close the loop, man. I mean, it's kind of senseless to constantly buy more compost when you're buying it every week almost, so I definitely use that, and I'll just layer out a bunch of rows, cover it up, just like any other time we're turning a row. We'll put that on and allow all those fresh microgreens to die, and then plant directly into them, and that's been working out really well as well. So that's been really cool.
Nice. Okay, and then let's talk a little bit about mushrooms. Because I've seen that you've started adding mushrooms to the mix, and I always think mushrooms are brilliant on small acreage because, you know, if you have the time to learn how to do them, they don't take up much space.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of put them, I mean, you could do them out of a closet. I remember, I can't remember what number he put on it, but like, you know, $80 a week, I think, out of a closet is what Trad Cotter, something to that effect. Trad Cotter had said in his organic mushroom book, using, you know, oyster mushrooms. So kind of do the same thing you did with you know, microgreens. What varieties of mushrooms are you growing, and what does that sort of look like? What does that process look like for you?
Well, I would love to say I have learned from the microgreens. I you know, only stuck to a couple different ones, but I went crazy. Oh, that, but I reeled it back. I was like, oh, dude, I'm doing it again. So I reeled it back, and now I'm doing mainly just oyster species, but learning like a lot of different oyster species and how to better grow them because they are very aggressive. So right now I'm doing. Well, actually, I'm moving out of because the season's changing, but I'm doing a lot of different king. Well, two different kings. I do a black pearl king oyster, as well as a king oyster, and then a blue oyster. Those are my main three for the winter. But now that we're starting to heat up a little bit more, I'm starting to go back over into more of the tropical species like pinks and golds, Floridas. And I want to play around with a couple more, like elms and actually no, I think it is elm that will kind of take the heat, and then some lion's mane too is the one, another one that I have played around with. But it kept on handing my butt to me, man, every single time. I could not get this one to go. So I'll get it. I have a feeling I'll get it this spring. Yeah, and then maybe some reishi too. I have the mycelium going, but I have yet to actually been able to fruit any of those out. But for the most part, the main bread and butter, I guess, is going to be oyster mushrooms. They're just easier to play with.
Yeah, they're wildly fast. I mean, it's something like 8 weeks.
Yeah, they're quick, man. And you know, I put them in my, just like you said. At the moment, I'm literally using a closet for my incubation. But I can hold, wow, a lot of weight in there. In terms of substrate, we're holding at least 250 pounds of bulk substrate with wood in that little area there. And then, man, I haven't even counted. It has to be well over, man, upwards of 60 to 70 jars of grain substrate in the same area. And I've been able to, within 2 weeks, get everything fully colonized and ready for either transferring onto a substrate or transferred over to the fruiting chamber, which is our mushroom hut. That's like the little shed outside. So yeah, it's been working out really well. And I mean, I tell you, the complement between the mycelium or the mushrooms and the microgreens is like, whoa, like I never ever thought that they would just play so well together. It's almost like a piece of a puzzle that just is like quick, like whoa. I mean, just in terms of business, the way that they work, it's like, this is awesome, man. I really like this. This is cool. It's just amazing. You know, and I think a lot of it is because of the mushrooms, just the way that they kind of forced me to learn how to grow them in terms of being sterile. You know, like I'm a farmer, I'm a gardener, I am not sterile. I'm dirty, man. I jump in the dirt, I play in the dirt all day. This is what I do. You know, I'm playing with bugs, I'm smashing bugs, I'm doing all this stuff, you know. But the mushrooms make you, you know, take a 180 degree kind of look at this whole thing and say, no, buddy, you have to be a little bit more sterile now. You have to be a little bit more aware of your movement and your actions And by doing that, I've been able to kind of transfer that same outlook onto my microgreens, and even the amount of contamination and the amount of, or I should say, like moldy trays that we get in the microgreens have, far diminished. Learning how to sterilize. I mean, just the sterilization process itself, that is amazing because I can sterilize now in my greenhouse, which now I'm heating my greenhouse with that steam. And, so it's like I'm, I'm going to be paying that, I'm going to be paying for that fuel regardless. So now it's actually going to heat my microgreens, which we use propane to heat our microgreens. But now I'm using propane to actually sterilize my mushroom substrate, which is still heating my greenhouse, which is still benefiting me with my microgreens at the same time, now benefiting me for growing mushrooms. And that's like some really cool function stacking. I was like, yeah, man, this is awesome. I'm loving this. So it's yeah, man, growing mushrooms is awesome. I love growing mushrooms, man. It's a really cool thing to do. And like I said, it's actually has me looking at just the way that I farm different. There's days where I'm literally just in my pajamas working, and it's like, oh, I gotta just go outside and water the microgreens now. And then I look at the plot and I'm like, oh shoot, but now I gotta I gotta go put on my pads and my boots and go out here. So but even on the plot, it's kind of made me think, like, hey, well, is there an easier way for me to generate the same amount of revenue that I'm doing on the plot, and keep my pajamas on, man. So I don't know if I haven't gotten to that point yet, but I've been thinking about it in perennials and kind of just playing around with that type of a thing on the plot. And that's all because of mushrooms. So yeah, I'm in love with them, man. If you can't tell, they're great.
What can you kind of describe that sterilization process? Because I know you have to pasteurize the substrate for the listener just being what you grow the mushrooms on. And what is your process with that? Because that's always the intimidating part for me is I want to do more mushrooms, but I'm like, what the heck am I going to pasteurize bags and stuff in? Like, what does that even look like? So what's that process for you?
Right now, I'm doing, so like I was saying before, we're new. So I've been playing around with doing wood substrate as well as straw substrate. For the wood, up to this point, I've been sterilizing mainly in my pressure cooker. And then I started playing around with a pressure cooker to tote steam type of sterilization. In the pressure cooker, I have a 23-quart pressure cooker. I can fit right about, to be safe, right about 4 or 5 5-pound bags of bulk wood substrate inside of those, inside of that pressure cooker. But that takes a lot of time. When I started doing the pressure cooker to tote, which is basically I just rigged up like a gas line that comes off of the spout on the steam spout of my pressure cooker. It runs into a tote, and then I cover it up with a couple different blankets to keep the heat in, and then I allow the steam to atmospherically sterilize my substrate. I can now fit, upwards about, I think, I still have yet to actually fill that whole entire thing up. I think now we are at that point to where we can fill it up with the bags. But I calculated, it looks like roughly 30 plus bags in that into that tote. So that's really cool. And then the other way we do it, the other substrate we're using is straw. So straw, it just really requires a pasteurization process, and that's running the same way with the tote and the pressure cooker for right about an hour and a half at hour and a half at 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Um, and yeah, that's how we've been doing it. And it's been working. It's been working out pretty well. Now it's just, trying to figure out how to do more at one time. But I tell you, with the bales of straw, I can actually do upwards of, what is it? What did I calculate that thing? I think upward, yeah, about 50 pounds of substrate, a go. So that equates into about 5 buckets, because we're doing a lot of it in buckets at this point. I do think we might change over to bags as well here pretty soon. But the buckets have actually been really nice inside the fruiting chamber. I've been able to make like columns and rows, and be able to walk in and out of there, and harvest and do the whole thing inside there. So that's been really nice. But the straw and the bulk, that's kind of how we're sterilizing it and pasteurizing. I stayed away from the line pasteurization just because that was it was still weird to me. So I stayed away from it. But I'd much rather just go, and I can see, customers asking, are these organic? And it's like, how to answer that? But at least now with the heat, I can say, yeah, we're going to add heat to this, and leaving at that, So that's pretty nice.
Do you have any issues with shelf life on those mushrooms? Like, that's always been one thing with the oysters, is that they don't have super long shelf life. What's your process for getting them to market fresh?
Man, I have yet to even take them to market. This is what's been crazy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we haven't even taken any of those to market. I've been doing my best to, but I'll have a chef just every single time I get a flush, either a chef or a person will just call me and they want whatever I have, and they'll take it. Now, mind you, I haven't really been doing those big 100-pound flushes yet. I'm doing like 5, 10 plus type flushes at this point, at this point. So we haven't really got to those big numbers. It looks like these next couple, that's what we've been setting ourselves up for. My goal is to do at least 50 pounds a week out of that little hut there. So that's my goal, and it looks like we're on target. So hopefully we can hit that and be able to get some stuff out into the market. The way that I plan on taking it is doing the whole cardboard box and just taking them out that way, and then displaying them, just so they look nice and everything, in baskets. As soon as we get, we get enough to take out there. I'm actually in one of my markets. The vendor right next to me is Bashan, which is a really big mushroom grower out here. And then a couple stalls down from me, there's another stall that actually sells mushrooms as well. So that's why I see them always bring everything in the cardboard boxes. And they've been doing it for years. I was like, just follow suit.
Okay, so before we're done, we need to talk about your gardens. Give us, like, what's going on out there. What are you kind of growing to be complementary to those microgreens? Is that in the calculus? Are you thinking about crops that complement your microgreens? Are you thinking about those crops, or what's your sort of strategy with these 30 beds?
The beds, man. So the beds were always exactly that. The way that I have always likened my plot, and I guess I could still do that even with the mushrooms, was always just like a big salad bar, if you will. So we had the microgreens. Then on the plot, we were selling leafy greens, and they're all to just kind of go together. And then when we did go into like our fruiting crops, like our tomatoes, I grow mostly like cherry tomatoes, and then slicing cucumbers. So it's always just based around a salad, if you will. The proteins now that we're growing in the mushrooms, I guess if you want to add those on top of them, you can. But it was just like the mushroom for me. I wanted to grow a protein, I guess, at the end of the day, and I don't have enough space to run chickens. Quail did come into mind, but I was like, I'll start here with the mushrooms. So that's kind of how it all plays out. It's like, it's just a big salad, if you will, man. Everything that would go good on a salad is what I grow. And that's kind of how I look at my plot. So yeah, it was, I guess, always just a pretty much compliment to microgreens, to be honest with you. But I guess to really be honest with you, my whole goal is just to grow. So I love growing stuff, and I just love growing stuff. So I was like, all right, well, I got microgreens. What can I do with this? And then one thing led to another, and here I am growing lettuce and stuff like that. But even now, have done the lettuce now for the last couple of years, or salad crops for the last couple of years on a small plot. This plot on the house in particular, I'm really now kind of thinking about moving into, like we were kind of talking about before, more perennial crops in fruit, but probably even before then, running more fruiting crops, and then kind of just thinking about expanding lettuce and stuff like that, maybe into like a whole different plot where I can actually get a substantial amount of lettuce going, because that stuff is, man, that it's sold out so fast, and I can't generate enough with what it is that I have. So just maybe it might be time to go ahead and get something bigger now.
Right. I mean, I'm it feels like several times you've kind of mentioned selling out of these things. Like, are you looking to expand? Or are you kind of comfortable in your space, in your spot, and just trying to figure out how to maximize that space?
I'm always trying to figure out how to maximize this space. And I think that, I don't want to call that a problem. I think it's a good thing. But at a certain point, it's like, well, how many different projects do you want to have here, Justin? It's like you're kind of going crazy, man. But so I don't want to make it sound as though you shouldn't maximize your space. I mean, my goal is to literally man, I want to blow the brains out of whatever space I'm on. I want whatever little square inch, if I can grow something on it, I want to grow something there. And that's kind of what I'm working on even more so now here. But, to be actually, we do a pretty good job monetarily here too, but to really be able to branch out and to be able to fulfill, a lot of markets, I feel as though, I might have to go ahead and expand, especially for the lettuces and stuff like that, or, any of the bigger crop, field crops, I think you kind of have to kind of get out of, at least either add another yard, which is, I'm not against that at all, but it looks like we actually might be getting another plot. We've been talking to a couple of just different people that have been interested in letting us use their space. So we'll see how that works out, and probably go that direction and play that. When I first started, like I was kind of getting at the very beginning, I had started out with, I had a couple different plots. And I think at that time, it was just a bit too much too soon. And I got really overwhelmed. And I was figuring it out. But, when you let something go and that relief sticks with you for, a couple months to a year, you're like, man, I'm glad I'm not over there anymore. I'm like, glad I'm not doing it. I think, it was time to let it go. And I think it was a good decision. But now, I'm selling out at the market of, all my salad greens. And I'm like, dude, we still have about an hour or two left, man. Like, you could still be selling salad greens here. So it's time to go ahead and get a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the kind of the ideal approach, is get to the point when you need more and not start at the point when you have too much. I don't even know if that's the right way to say it, but that's what I'm thinking. Yeah. And also, I just think, with something like microgreens or mushrooms, if you are at that point when you've kind of tapped out your space, and you feel like you have more market and more time to kind of do another project, microgreens and mushrooms they're so great for that. You can fit them in such small spots.
Yeah.
In the profitability. It really increases your potential on small acreage, and cash flow. I mean, microgreens are so fast. It's like instant cash flow.
Instant cash flow, man. Instant. There, like if lo and behold, nobody would ever wants this to happen, but if your whole crop, just is gone, within a week, you can be back on the road to recovery. You know what I mean? Actually have, money coming back in, which is amazing. I mean, even, there was, what was it? At least probably about 2 years ago, where a really crazy windstorm came by and just, it took us out. I mean, every row of field greens was just gone. And what I had was the microgreens. And that's when I learned, like, oh, the microgreens are actually what's really supporting the whole business. I mean, it's not when you learn. I mean, it's on paper, but to actually physically go through it and see, like, dude, yeah, you don't need really to run field crops. Field crops are kind of like the icing on the cake, at least at the time. Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, just to kind of learn that and see that happen firsthand of just how powerful microgreens are. And then, yeah, adding the mushrooms to the mix now, it's like, dude, what? Like, when it gets cold in the winter, like next year, totally, man, I don't have to worry about, as long as I have, my mushrooms going the way that I want them to, which I don't see why not. But I don't have to worry about running in the winter at all, and still be all year long, because I got the mushrooms going, and it's going to be relatively a lot. I mean, it's going to be, a lot easier than going out into the field. And although in the winter, there's a lot less work, but I don't have to harvest in the cold or play any of those games. And we are in Southern California, so I still am turning rows in the winter, to make everything work. So now it's kind of like, well, do you have to do that this year? And so I guess I'll come up with that decision here pretty soon, whether or not I'm going to actually try to even do any leafy greens at all next year. I did low key take a week off this time around for the winter, which was really nice to be able to do that. And that, and which was an accomplishment. I was totally stoked on that. But now it's kind of like I may not have to worry about that at all, and still be just as lucrative, if not more. And especially if it's just me running the mushrooms. I mean, they're just so easy once you start. I don't want to put it like that in terms of, like, they're easy in terms of physicality. You know what I mean? Like, being on the field, you're constantly expanding your body. You're just constantly, just using it all the time. Now I can do like a lot of work sitting down, especially if I'm in the lab. I can do a lot of stuff like in one spot. It's not super heavy. It's just really easy, and it's a real cool flow. And next thing I know, I'm done with, hundreds of pounds of substrate. It's just been inoculated. And I did it watching television, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, Justin Gay, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me and talking about your farm. It's super cool to hear what you've got going on.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me, man. Loving everything that you do over there, Jesse. So yeah, man, it's an honor to be able to chat with you, man.
All right, if you enjoyed that episode, make sure to give Justin a follow on Instagram and all the places. I will hook it up with links in the show notes. Also, make sure you are subscribed to many things we do, including our email list. When you go to our site, an annoying little box pops up and says, hey, we have an email list, and you should sign up for that at no-tillgrowers.com. That way, whenever we have a new project launch, you will be the first to know about it. And there are always new things going on. Jenny Love just uploaded a new tulips episode for the No Till Flowers feed. There is Growers Live with Josh Satin every other Tuesday. We have a new podcast series hosted by Jackson Roulette coming out soon on collaborative farming. And that is not all for the summer, so stay tuned. Make sure you are subscribed to this podcast and leave a review, but this week all reviews must be as cute as Justin's new puppy Otis. Seriously, go over to Instagram and check it out. It's so adorable. So I guess adorable reviews only this week. Huge thanks as always to Jackson Roulette and Josh Satin for their help. Thanks as always to Willie Breeding for the cute theme song. Biggest thank you imaginable to Hannah Crabtree for being amazing. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week. 2 more episodes. Okay, bye. I like adding stuff about microgreens and mushrooms. I don't think I've talked about mushrooms at all on the podcast.
Oh, really?
We've discussed microgreens here or there, but I don't think little tidbits, but nothing really in depth. I think there's some great potential there, especially on small acreage when you're trying to fill it out.
Yeah. No, the mushroom game, man, I tell you, it's been, wow, almost overwhelming. The first pictures I put up on Instagram, I wasn't expecting to be selling them to anybody. I was literally like, hey, I'm growing mushrooms. This is what I'm doing. And then the next thing I know, I had chefs just hitting me left or right. I was literally selling the hobby, the little hobby block mushrooms, man. And from there, I just kept on going and going. They are extremely lucrative in this area. And then, the ability to be able to drive them and send them wherever you want. It gets me out of California now. I mean, it's amazing. They're just a great thing to add on. I think any farm. Richard Perkins did some stuff with them with oysters, a real low tech way, which that helped me out a lot. Watching him do some stuff, and so I think everybody should think about them at least.